Hey everyone, welcome to ReBloom, the podcast where we explore the power of change, rediscovery, and living with intention.
That's right. We're your hosts, Lori and Jamie, two friends who really love a good story about transformation.
In each podcast, we're going to chat with inspiring guests who've made bold pivots in their lives or careers. They've let go of what no longer served them to embrace something more authentic, joyful, and true to who they really are.
And the best part, many of them reconnect with passions or dreams they discovered as kids. It's about finding the seeds planted long ago and letting them bloom again.
So if you're ready for real conversations about reinvention, purpose, and following your creative heart, you're in the right place.
Let's dive in and see what it takes to rebloom.
Boy, are our listeners in for a really great treat today on someone who has taken some major pivots and blown up in a big way. This is an incredible conversation.
I kind of feel like sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need, even when you don't know that's what you need. So some of the pivots came at her and she was not expecting them. But where it took her, it just blows my mind. We were just in awe. So it's going to be a great, great thing for our listeners to hear.
It's a great conversation, and I think if you're on the edge of wanting to rebloom, this conversation is going to probably be just what you need. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of ReBloom. We are so excited that you have joined us, and I'm excited to have my co-host, Lori Siebert here. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Jamie. How are you? I'm glad I'm able to do this today. I've been suffering from vertigo, which is no joke, and I'm feeling better now. So I'm really excited to talk with our guest today.
I am too. Who are we talking with today, Lori?
So this person, I feel like I've been friends with forever, but this is the first time I'm actually talking like semi-live. We go back and forth on Instagram a lot about different things. We kind of do some similar things. Her name is Juliette Crane, and she is an amazing artist and teacher, and she just shared something about potentially being an author. So we're going to get into her entire journey. And I know that there have been some pivots along the way, which is what we love to talk about. So welcome, Juliet.
Welcome, Juliet.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, thank you for being here. You know, I have to tell you a fun story. I was just teaching down in Charlotte, and Lori had sent me a text message that said that you were going to be on our podcast. And my phone was flipped over, and one of the attendees saw your name. And they said, "Oh my gosh, she's incredible. She's just so cool." And I'm like, "Oh, that's really nice." I'm like, "Yay, she's going to be on our podcast." So welcome, welcome.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear. That is just amazing, and small worlds coming together.
Oh, in the creative world, it's pretty interesting, the connections. And I think we travel in similar communities.
Definitely.
So I was really glad you reached out to talk with us.
Yeah.
So we usually start just asking, take us back to, I mean, you can go back to when you were a little girl, or you can start a little later at a major pivot point. Can't talk today. And just kind of share your journey with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of when I was a little girl, basically, I always loved to color and paint and do art stuff. Like for all of my Christmas gifts, that's what I would always get. I didn't necessarily ask for that stuff. It's just what I was always doing and always into. So that's what I would always get, art, different art supplies and everything. And so in 2009, I lost my job. I had been going from job to job. I was a web developer. I was a floral designer. I was a photographer for a while, and just sort of doing all of these jobs on the edge of creativity, and some of them not even so creative, like web design. I really just did not like working in an office, and it just was depleting my spirit. But I felt like this is what you're supposed to do, right? Like this is what you do when you get a job. You just go to an office and be under these fluorescent lights. And I hated it. I knew there had to be something else. I just didn't know what that would be. And so in 2009, I was fired from one of the jobs I actually liked, which was landscaping. I love flowers and plants and being outside. And so when I was landscaping, I thought, well, this is fantastic. And I wasn't even doing art at that time. I just was finding these other, creative outlets like playing with flowers. And I got a phone call, or it was a phone message it was firing me from that job. And I thought, oh my God, like the one thing I finally like, here I'm fired and he's not even going to like tell me in person or anything. It was just a phone message. And I decided, okay, I have to just take care of myself. I need to just take a little time off and not think about what I'm going to do next, just sort of get back to myself. And so I did what I did as a little girl and took my art supplies that I had and went out in the backyard in the summer and spread everything out on a big blanket. And I just played and I focused on color and dripping and splashing color and making a mess, but it didn't matter because I was in my yard in the grass and the sun was shining and it was just so much fun. And I found myself again. And that led to painting on these giant sheets of masonite board that I got at Home Depot. And I started painting these characters, like figures of women and giant owls and women holding owls. And I just was having a lot of fun with them. And friends started coming to my house and they were like, hey, you should show these you should have a show somewhere. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll ask at my local library because they have art there. And so I asked at the library and they had a cancellation. So they were like, yeah, you can come the next month and hang your artwork. And so I did. And I thought I might as well make an event out of it and invite everybody I know and have like a little opening and have some wine and cheese and just see what happens. And so I sent out an evite to everybody and people showed up and people I didn't know bought paintings. And those were like my first paintings that I sold. And then other people asked for cards and prints and said like, you should make jewelry out of these. And so that all just kind of got me really excited that people were interested in what I was painting. I was having fun painting. And then they wanted more. And so that kind of gave me direction for my next steps locally. And then I was also blogging at the time on Blogspot. And, this is like 15 years ago. And so I started connecting with people online also, like as I was painting, posting my artwork. And then when I mentioned I was having an opening, people were like, you should do something online too. And so I got all of the support online telling me to open a shop. And then people were like, how are you doing this? And they were like, you should have a class about this. And so I did an in-person class locally, and then people wanted an online class. So then I started an online class, and it just sort of kept
Piece
going
by
step by
piece.
step.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
sounds
exactly.
like a snowball almost.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
curious because you said that you lost your job,
Hmm.
but I can't imagine that the next day you're out in your backyard painting. Like,
It was
did
kind
you
of like
get
that.
it
I
was
was
really?
I love
so
that.
low. I had also been writing a fiction novel at the time. Like that was sort of where my creative energy was going. I had this idea to write a novel about a woman who could jump into her paintings. So I wasn't painting, but I just had this idea that I wanted to write a book. Okay, I'll write a book about it. Evolved into this woman who could jump into her paintings.
Ooh, I
And
love that idea.
Yeah.
it also is still on track. It's just, taking more time than I expected. But that led me to, I went to a 6-week writers workshop out in New Hampshire. And it was an intensive writers workshop to edit this novel and to meet other writers. And I just get really intense about stuff and really obsessive. And so I just dove into every critique group I could and I took all of the critique and I just worked. And that really burned me out because people were not liking the imagination in my book. They thought it
Mm.
was like too color because I was working with adult people that were working on adult fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And people just weren't, I don't know if people weren't in, or this group I was working with was not open to the whimsy that I am. And
Uh-huh.
so it really has then taken this whole career of, being an artist and finding that community to then, be able to finish that book as well as then continue to share my paintings and my process.
It's so interesting to me how sometimes the right time, it's all you have a seed. Like this has happened to me a lot of times where I'll have an idea and I'll think this is a brand new idea and I'd never thought it before and I'll get all excited and then I'll find like in an old journal where I wrote that very idea down, but I
Yeah.
didn't pursue it then because it wasn't the right time. So
Absolutely.
it sounds like a lot of your experience is kind of like that. Like,
Definitely. And I'm very much at the point now, finally, where I am just letting things unfold and recognizing that things take time to unfold. And
Yeah.
rather than me pushing constantly and trying to make everything happen and control everything, I'm finally like, okay, I get it now. I have to just step back and let things unfold as I'm also, not taking control of them, but sort of lining things up and taking creative action so that things can happen, but just not being so attached to the outcome.
Well,
oh,
I think that is so neat, and I think that that's often what people at least that's been my experience is, I started down one path and then another thing led to another, and you never thought that that was the path you were gonna go down. But I have 2 questions. One's sort of a question, one's a observation question. One is why owls and women?
oh my God, I was
Uh,
going to ask that
that
question.
was my first question. I'm like, that's an interesting combination. But then my observation slash question is interesting about your fictional book about diving into your paintings because you do have a strong female influence with these incredible eyes. And it's funny, I felt like I was looking into your paintings. Like I felt that way when I looked into it. And I'm like, I don't know if that was her intention, but I was like, wait a minute, this is all coming together. But why women and owls? I would love to know that.
Well, thank you so much for all of those kind words
Yeah.
because that's very much how I feel as I'm painting. I just see the eyes in my paintings sort of as a mirror. And so as I'm painting, that's how I can kind of feel that it's coming together because it's sort of, I'm looking at this person, which is a reflection of my internal self, which then also feels like a reflection of the entire universe all in one reflection, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
And so it's
Wow.
sort of this like universal mirror that I'm feeling connected to as I paint. And when I started painting owls, it was just sort of, I got into this process of covering up the white space because I felt too scared to start on just white or just a blank canvas or blank paper or whatever. And so I started just sort of playing with color, scribbling color, and then taking a step back and seeing what I could see within that color. And I all of a sudden saw an owl, and it was the first owl I painted called Moonbelly. And I initially was really into having a piece of paper or something in the owl's belly that was also reflected in the external world. And so, sort of like mirroring that effect of having something that's inside of you and, being able to demonstrate it externally and then also have it sort of inspire you at the same time. Internal external worlds, like that just fascinates me, and how everybody connects. And so when I saw this owl, I just was like, well, I might as well go with it and just outline this owl. And that is how the first owl came about. And I just kind of got obsessed with them. As a little girl, my parents had this wooden owl statue next to our fireplace that was this beautiful carved piece that was basically, when I was like 5, it was as tall as me. And so I remember like coloring next to the fireplace with this owl beside me.
Oh, wow.
And I think that always, stuck with me as a nice sort of guardian of an image.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back just a second because I was listening to Amy Poehler was on a Smartless podcast episode, and they were talking today about living in the moment versus planning, which is what we were talking about. Like, how much do you stay present because
Mm,
that's what everyone says you should do, versus being a planner and being someone who wants to make things happen? Like, finding that balance between those two is, I think, really, really hard because I always want to be prepared.
me too.
Yeah.
And
That's a great
and
question.
so I'm curious about that. And how do you manage both? Are there things that you do to manage both?
Well, definitely the book that I mentioned that I am writing. I just put together a nonfiction book proposal for this book that basically I have found that my creative process has really helped me live my life, better live my life. So when I am creating, I can be fully present, but then I can also get into in my head. And when I've put together online classes, I always put together the painting videos. I recorded the painting videos and then did the audio second as like an overlay. And that made me sort of be really conscious of my painting process while I was painting so that I could see when my inner critic stepped in and said, like, you're not doing this right, or this is ugly. Like, what do you think you're doing? You're going to turn your owl into a woman? Like, why would you do that? It's perfect the way it is, like all these doubts that come in. And I just recognized, oh, that's this weird voice that's just always coming up in my head. I can choose to not follow it. I know that, like, when I've been painting, there's always an ugly stage. There's always that voice that comes in. There's always the point where I feel like I'm painting something silly. And it's especially when I'm trying something new.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've then applied that to life as well, where I recognize, when I get really anxious about something, it's like, okay, wait a second. This is just, you don't have to stay in this anxiety. You can do something that makes you feel better, because so much of it for me is in my head. It's just my mind chatter. And once I can, through my painting process, I was able to recognize this voice in the head and then be able to do something about it rather than listen to it. And so, like, when I'm anxious, I have sort of this list of things that I can do in life. One of them is sketchbooking. I love to just take out my watercolors in a sketchbook or pencil and just kind of doodle and play. And that really helps, like, completely detour that anxious voice in my head. So then it's like I'm present and I'm comfortable. And then when I'm comfortable, I feel confident again. And then once I feel confident again, I can do that new thing or do that thing that was maybe scaring me or freaking me out. So by whether it's in my painting practice or in life, being able to recognize that moment when it's just a voice in my head, and not overriding it, but doing something about it and caring for that voice, and then making myself feel better so I can move forward from that place of feeling good rather than like quiet, be quiet, like get away. So that's really helped me. And the two work really well together.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and Urban Stems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention ReBloom. And a huge thanks to Urban Stems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at ReBloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today.
So you had the show at the library, and it
Mhm.
like you kind of like from there like rambled off like all this stuff that
Yeah.
happened from that. Can you like take us back and slow down that process a little bit and tell us like, because now you're making product and now you're doing this and now you're like, how did that all unfold in more real time? Like slow
Yeah.
that down a little bit for us.
Well, the
Well,
crazy thing is that it actually did all happen. Like I do one-on-one coaching and mentoring, and someone had asked, like, how did you actually start making money from, from that point of having that show and selling a few paintings? What did you do to make money? And I went back into, I have this class called Business for Creatives, where I totally went through every product that I designed, every thing, every way I marketed, um, and I came up with a list of everything that I did within that first year, and it is absolutely, it's crazy. um, and I can recognize, because shortly after I burned out,
mm,
but I was such a workaholic at that point that I just wanted to keep going, and I thought I was being enthusiastic, but really I was like not feeding the fire at the same time. So after the show, so like I had the show at the library in October of 2009, and by December 15th of 2009, I was doing a local, I had gone into this local shop, and it was a little boutique, and I really wanted to ask her, if I could show my paintings there, like have another show. And she said, you should, I have a space in the back, you should teach classes here too. And I was like, okay, cool, people are asking for that online, so maybe locally I'll just give it a try. And so by December 15th, I had that first class. Then I had another one in January, and then another one in February. My husband then lost his job right
my,
around that time. So that was then also part of the like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do for money? Like, I have to really make this work. And so I like was making it all work from a financial perspective, in addition to being creative. And luckily, it all just sort of ran together. But after I taught those few classes, that's when I ended up going on an art retreat out in California, and that was my first art retreat. And I went with these two women that were starting their own art classes, or their own online classes. And so I was not planning on doing an online class. I have the idea, and I wasn't, I mean, I sound like I was a really like action oriented person at the time, but because of them, we went on this art retreat. And then after, we stayed in Big Sur for a little bit, and they were absolutely putting together their first online classes. And they were like, by the time we leave, we are going to open registration.
Oh my
And
oh
gosh.
I
my.
was like, are you kidding me? But because they were doing it, I was like, okay. And I had all the ideas. I had my process down. I had practiced it in the in-person classes I was teaching, and I saw how students were reacting, and that it really worked for people, this sort of step-by-step layering practice of like laying down the color and then using simple shapes to create this owl, and
Mhm.
making it all fit together. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's my class right there. So I might as well do this. And I opened registration like literally that February by the time we went home. Maybe it was March. But yeah, then I opened registration, and I didn't even have the class created. I just had the outline. So then when I went home, I started recording the videos, and that was my first online class called How to Paint an Owl.
If you could
Wow.
see our faces right now, we're just sitting here in amazement at you because it's like, wait a minute, what you did? But I think there's a couple of things that you did that I love, and I want our listeners to kind of key into those. One is that I love that you did a ton of stuff in 2009, but you also did a little mini audit of everything that you did, because some things work and some things don't. And when I'm working with clients or I'm talking to people, I always say, where's your bread and butter? I mean, you can do things that are very fun and interesting, but they make no money. And if your goal, it depends on what your goals are, but if your goal is to be successful financially, you have to do that audit. So I loved that. But I also love that you had no fear and you were just trying all of these things to figure out where the bread and butter was. I mean, I love the teaching and the online teaching, and I'm just I have no words. Lori, what are you
Yeah,
gonna
because every one of those paths takes a
Yeah.
lot of
Man.
research, and you like to know what you're doing to launch a
Yeah.
class and to do product. All each avenue is a lot, and you were doing it all at one time.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I had started doing like taking prints, mini prints of my artwork and putting it on jewelry and putting it on magnets. And
Cool. Yeah.
just that's where I was kind of just having fun. But I would sell those like a whole set of magnets that took me forever to create. And they were all I hand embellished them on top of it. And it would be like $15 for this whole set. And that didn't account for my time or my costs. And I was like,
Right.
there's no way this can be, if I'm serious about this, I can't keep doing this. So
Right.
that was definitely how it became, as luckily people were asking for classes, and it was it didn't exist at that time. Like online classes weren't, it was just the beginning of that stuff happening.
Yeah.
So there was no right or wrong way. And not that there necessarily is now, but it was new to me and, new to everybody else. So it was just kind of a conversation with knowing what my community wanted and working with these other amazing women that were also trying to figure it out and just sort of doing it together.
It
I love
almost
that.
seems like you exploded. You lost that job
Yeah.
and you just kind of went pow and like got
Yeah.
shot out of a creative cannon. And then
Definitely.
and it seems like you were driven both by like the need to be creative, but also the need to make a living because of what happened with your husband. So you had
Yeah.
dual drivers actually propelling you
Absolutely.
forward.
So
Definitely.
so as you get through 2009, 2010-ish, things start to kind of, I would imagine, start to gel or come together for you. What were some of the things as you began to pivot in this art career that you saw that you're like, nope, this is the direction I want to go, and here's why? What were you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely because of the financial perspective and the financial need to make things happen. My husband ended up starting his own business doing IT for nonprofits. And so luckily in 2010, like he was able to do that and make that happen. So he was making his income, and then my online classes, the How to Paint an Owl, did really well. And so I thought, well, I'll just do another one of those. So I did a How to Paint an Owl too, and that did really well. And I was then also selling my paintings and still trying a few other things at that time. But really, the teaching in person and online was sort of where I chose to focus my energy for, because I loved it and it was a great financial opportunity. And then in 2011, things happened with the government where nonprofit funding was taken away. So my husband's business kind of, it had done so well that first year, and then it was sort of a lot of crickets. And so because he was into IT, and has always known everything about IT. And my business was taking off with these online classes. We became a unit and started working together. And he started helping me build my online classes so that I could do that a lot more efficiently and move them onto a private website and, help me film them a whole lot better and help me include the audio and just really make everything um, a lot more professional and then easier for me.
So interesting that you're saying this because I know so many artists that have a husband just like yours. And I'm like, why don't I have that?
Yeah.
Because
Well, I will
Esty
say
McLeod,
that,
her husband helps her.
yeah.
Jean Oliver, her husband helps her. Like, that's such a great like thing to have.
So I will say though, as of 2019, we stopped working together.
Ah,
Okay.
So there's a reason for that. So it was really fortunate at the time, but we definitely recognized that it's not a long-term sustainable thing for us in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, he does still help. Like if I have to do a live Zoom or something, he can totally step in and he doesn't mind doing that. But we are not a couple who can continue to work together.
Well, I work with my husband. He does the financial stuff, and I have to tell him often, I'm off duty. Like, I
yeah.
Yes.
don't want to talk about work right now. Like,
For me, it was the reverse. Like I'm the one that's just 100% always in it. And that just became all of our relationship. And we realized we didn't really want to live that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that
and
was
that's
another pivot.
That
Yet
another
was a
another
pivot.
pivot.
major pivot. Absolutely.
So what
Yeah.
did you do then? Because you were probably used to him doing that piece of the puzzle. And
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were able to, that was a really big pivot. We were able to sort of take the classes and move them, by that time in 2019, Kajabi existed. And
hmm
so he had built this private classroom and we were able to move all of the classes to Kajabi, which then had everything and more built into it. And then so we were able to do that, so I didn't have to rely on him for maintaining the classrooms anymore.
hmm
And then I also have a virtual assistant. And so she stepped up and started doing a lot more for me at that point as well. And then COVID happened. So 2000 or 2020, it was like online classes just started booming because everyone was
Yeah.
taking online classes.
right.
So that was that part of the pivot, which then allowed me the time. I realized that I missed my painting and I missed my writing. So that's sort of where I'm also focusing my business now, is going back into my fiction book and then revisiting this nonfiction book. And then I've started reaching out to galleries and working with them in different ways and painting larger. Like I've always wanted to paint
Mm,
larger. So the business is kind of moving in different directions that serve my creative needs a little bit more again.
okay. So you're backing away a little bit from the online teaching, but you are
Correct.
teaching live because I know you're
That teaching.
teaching,
Yeah.
like you said,
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
May
Yeah.
Yeah.
with
I
Uptrack,
am.
which I'm also teaching with them this fall. So
Yeah, that's super exciting. So I did a retreat. I live in Wisconsin, and so I did a in-person retreat in Wisconsin last summer, and that is something that I really enjoy doing. And then I'll be teaching in France in a few weeks, and sort of just playing with that as well because I missed the being with people in person. Like
mhm,
after COVID,
Yeah.
mhm,
it was kind of like, oh, wait a second, I'm an introvert, but I still love being with people and hearing people's stories. So
right.
I really wanted to find other ways to connect with people too.
Yeah.
Well, and I think and even when you very first started teaching, it's interesting because just meeting with those people in those small little classes in the back of the shop, they gave you the inspiration to set up your online classes. You knew because you have to meet people. And plus it's the connections and it's just, we all need people, certainly after 2020. I think we all need people. So are you doing still small local workshops or are you doing more big retreats now?
Well, definitely the one in Wisconsin was maybe 15 people,
Okay.
which was small to like, I mean, to me, that's small. And then same with France will be about the same amount of people, about 15 people. And that I did a live Zoom a few weeks ago, and that was like more like hundreds of people and being online, and it was fun, but it's so weird when you can't see people. I definitely love the more being able to talk to people one to one. Like my favorite part about the Zoom was being able to see what people had created and talk to them about why they painted what they did. And I also started doing the one to one mentoring and coaching, which is online. And so that also, too, kind of, it was the very intimate one to one sessions, but I still, in person, small group is my favorite. Really just like hanging out and painting together
Me
is my
too.
favorite
Yeah,
thing.
It's fun. I agree.
I just filmed for two separate online summits, and the whole time I'm doing it, I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't want to film. I don't want to edit. I just want to paint.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Yes, that's
love being
very
with
much.
people too. It's so fun. It's just so fun. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
And
you
especially in a casual environment for me, like really just hanging out and, having a sketchbook or something, just like when it's not something specific you're having to paint. That's when I don't know how I'm going to do that more, but I definitely have this drive and longing to do that more.
Yeah.
so you've created this beautiful business. Tell us about creating an art business. So you're now 10 plus years into it.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
15 years.
yeah, tell us what you've learned, some of the, there's been pivots along the way, things you maybe
Yeah.
had to stop doing. Were you licensed? Did you license your work at all?
I
No.
never did do that. No.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, I definitely, the biggest thing for me has always been to have a creative community, whether that's online and or in person, because there have been a lot of challenges and a lot of things that I didn't know how to do, of course. And so by having different people I could reach out to and ask questions, like that has just been phenomenal. And to be able to then support other people in whatever they need as well has been great. I also, that my biggest lesson has been that, like, don't just give up. Don't expect that it's going to just happen. And don't expect that your first idea is the one that's going to work. That to me, it's like life, business, art, they all are so similar that I always have to try something in order to figure out what is actually going to work. And usually it's within that trying that then I figure out the better ideas.
Mm,
So,
mm.
maybe, well, I mean, just a few weeks ago, I was thinking I was going to okay, now it's time. I'm going to publish my fiction book about this woman who can jump into her drawings. I've been working on that now literally for 20 years, and it's totally changed so many times, but the core has stayed the same, but it just keeps changing. And so I finally, I'm working with this mentor of mine, and she was helping me with the query letter. And I thought, okay, this is it. And then she got super busy, and I realized the book would need so much more work than I can give it right now. And so rather than sitting in that disheartening moment, I thought, okay, what can I do now? I can work on this nonfiction book proposal that has been sitting for 2 years unfinished. And maybe that's what I should do. And so I got that out, and I heard all the voices of, oh my God, I can't do this. Who do you think you are to be writing a nonfiction book? And how are you ever going to get this published? But I was like, nope, just keep going. And I looked at that nonfiction book proposal. I thought all I had to do was write my sample chapters. Easy, right? But I thought they were at least sort of finished. But when I looked at them again, I was like, I don't like any of this. So I had to rewrite all those, sample chapters, but they're so much better now. And the whole book proposal is so much better now. It's like completely aligned with where I would like to go from here now. And so, no, it's not that fiction book. And it's, it's like, it wasn't what I thought was going to work out, but it's this new thing. And by allowing it to just unfold and still having that enthusiasm, I feel like I'm on the right track.
I think that's so awesome. It's interesting. I have a book proposal out there myself, and it's a nonfiction, and I just blew up the whole thing myself. So I completely understand. And you know what? It's so much better now. To your point. I mean, but I think sometimes you sit with something, and as we've talked about, the seeds are there. You know kind of where you want to go, but it's just you need to have it just sort of germinate a little bit before you can then fully express where you want to go. And so Lori doesn't even know that, but I just spent all last week blowing it up and
Oh my gosh.
redoing the whole thing because I'm like, I had sent it out to someone who gave me great feedback. And that's the other thing. It's being open to critiques and being open to where you are. And it's not a no, but it's a, we need more, or and you need to pivot along the way. And so I hope both book ideas sound amazing. So we'll see.
I
I
know, they
know.
really do.
Thank
I
Yeah.
you.
especially want to read the one about the woman who can jump into her paintings. That just
Yeah.
like that really intrigues me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I am so excited about it, and it's just it started as a middle grade novel, and then it became an adult novel, and it's like as life happens, those things get infused into the work, whether it's painting or writing or whatever you're creating, and it keeps getting deeper, and to me it keeps getting better.
Kind of reminds me of layering and painting. Like,
I was
Exactly.
gonna say,
I have some
yeah.
paintings hanging in my house right now, and I'm like dying to paint over them or add to them, or because I don't love them anymore. They're like,
Mhm.
I've changed. But then I'm like, well, do I want to keep them as a reminder of where I came from, or do I want to like completely start over and paint over them? So,
Definitely. And
yeah,
it's also, there has been this afraid, very petrified part of me, and a self-sabotaging part of me, that doesn't, can work on that book forever, because then that's also super safe to just keep, I'm just working on it, it's still not
yeah,
finished.
right,
But if
right.
you stay in that mode, then nobody's ever going to see it. And that is sort of, well, for me at least, it feels really silly and unfortunate to leave things at that point right now. So I definitely keep checking in with myself and making sure I'm not self-sabotaging.
Yeah, well, and again, I think everything has its time, its timing.
Hmm,
And I
absolutely.
think you'll know. You will know when it's the right time to put that out in the world.
Well, and for me too, it seems that external circumstances seem to present themselves at certain moments to help me move forward with different things as well. So
Mm,
part of the reason I decided to move forward with the nonfiction book was because I joined an online writers community, and that I just happened to see was available, and that sort of led me down this new path. And so it's kind of the internal voice awakens, and then the external circumstances also present themselves.
that starting with 2009 and getting
Exactly.
fired from your job, like that
Exactly.
was external, but boy, did that light you on fire.
Definitely. Well, and I think the way it happened, that was absolutely it. I was like, well, if I am just not going to like any jobs, and I'm just going to get fired from the one job I do like, I'm going to just do something I actually really love.
There you go. I love that. Is there something else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, the one last piece I think is coming back to joy, that I feel that so often I can get really caught up in what I think should happen, or the way I think things should look, or what I should be doing. And it's really helped me to realign with my internal compass and where I need to go, when I guess it sounds cliche, but like following your joy, finding your joy, doing the thing. Sometimes I think like, oh, just do the thing that you really enjoy. And for me, okay, that's painting. So I'll go into my studio and I'll be painting, but it doesn't mean just painting anything. It's also very specific to what I feel in that moment, what colors I feel like exploring, and what techniques I want to play with. Just recognizing that there are specifics within that moment. And I feel like when I align with that part of me that is all of a sudden lit up by certain things, and I give it the attention it's looking for, then it helps me to better find and address those things externally as well, and in the rest of my life, so that by, feeling that joy, I'm attracting more of it.
Oh, I agree with that. And I've been working for the last several years on forever. I was the kind of person that I had to do my shoulds first, like my to-do list, the things I have to do. Maybe I don't want to, but I would
Mhm.
always save like what I wanted to do or what I was drawn to for almost like the dessert. And then sometimes you don't have time in the day for that because you've taken the whole day up doing the things you should do. And I've been really working on, what is it? One thing I want to start the day with, maybe that is more of a want to do, because I think it does when you kind of shift your way of thinking, then the rest of your day kind of falls into place in a much more peaceful way.
Exactly. I've been doing something similar too, where instead of filling my morning with all the things I should do, because I've just had my coffee and I have the energy to do all this stuff that I don't really want to do, but I should do, I am just telling myself to, do the painting, do the writing, do the creating in the morning, the stuff that I'm really excited about, so that that energy gets put into the stuff that is actually moving
Uh,
me forward in the way that I want to have my life move forward rather than
right.
the way that it should move forward.
That
I
is great advice. I love that. If you're a morning person, some people are night people, so maybe they do those things that they love doing at night when they feel
Mhm.
most energized. But I think it's syncing your timing, your body to put in place the things that you love to do when you are most energized. And then I think everything else just kind of falls into place.
Definitely. And also not being distracted by the things that you think that you should get done before you get to the dessert, like you said.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you, Juliet. This has been just the most amazing conversation, and hope you have a wonderful trip to France. And peace, love, and rebloom to our listeners.
Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of ReBloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.